What do you refuse to be as an advisor?
I refuse to do the norm. I refuse to kowtow to the complicit players out there that I think are what's making healthcare insufferable and unsustainable. I could not rest my head on the pillow every night feeling good about myself and what I do as an advisor if I'm just doing the norm, what everybody else is doing. That's my job, is to put everything out there as an advisor for my client to make a truly informed decision. And if you're leaving things out for whatever reason, financial or otherwise, that's something I will never do.
Was there a time in your career that you rejected to work with a sure to be prospect because for some reason?
Yeah, there's been a few instances where, for all intensive purposes, I fired the client. Like, we walked away from it because we just didn't see eye to eye. And they just refused to listen or take our advice or recommendation. They wanted to do just the status quo. And I felt that with what we bring to the table, it was in their best interest to probably go a different direction.
That's impressive. So you're ready to lose a commission as a broker in order to avoid doing something that you believe is wrong for the client.
Yeah, it's it's like a moral imperative. Morally, I just couldn't see myself accepting that and continuing to have that relationship.
Have you ever tried to quit? Yes.
No, no,
Ever.
never, ever.
I hear
I
brokers all the time saying that they want to quit almost every single day. They just never do.
No, I've done this long enough, Margot. I have pretty thick skins and I love what I do. And I feel like I have a lot to offer and to teach and to counsel decision makers on that. Eventually people will come around. There'll be enough people to keep me busy that will listen. But no, I just feel like I've been doing this my entire adult life and it's very fulfilling. If you think about the potentially tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people you affect on something that is outside of what they make for a living, is probably the second most important aspect of their employment. That's a big deal, especially when it comes to what's going on in 2026, when it comes to health insurance, healthcare costs, access. It's top of mind to everybody, especially with everything that's going on legislatively and out in DC. You cannot turn a news cycle with not hearing something about the healthcare industry. What value do I bring as an advisor? And what benefit do I bring from a value perception standpoint to a company and their employees if I just do the bare bones basic thing that everybody else is doing? I want to differentiate myself. I feel like differentiating myself is going to provide not only more value for my client and their employees, but also for me as an advisor. And that's the difference. That's how I've been for a couple decades now. I learned the racket that's going on. I was slinging it just like everybody else 15, 20 years ago. And then I said, no, I'm not doing it any longer. No, I've unpacked and uncovered the deep, dark secrets behind the scenes that to this day are still going on. But unfortunately, 95% of the industry is refusing to do anything about it because it's a lot of work. It's like you're putting up a fight. You're fighting the status quo. You're fighting what's known as the cartel. And that's a big, massive conglomerate you're going after. So it's not easy. And I think a lot of people in my position refuse to do that.
Prospects are usually afraid of the disaster situations happening with self-funding, and they don't want to take any kind of, I don't know, responsibility. They think that full insured is protecting them from any lawsuits. But we talked about that in previous episode, that it actually exposes you to the lows,
Correct.
especially in 2026. But I would like to talk more about those risks, actually. The things that could go wrong with self-funding, things that you honestly saw in your career and you're saying right now that can go wrong so that they would understand that it's all solvable, even if things go wrong. Name the situations when things went wrong with self-funding and how you resolved those issues.
I was involved in a prior life with a stop loss issue that occurred where there was a question of disclosure. And what it came down to is there was a significantly early premature baby that was born that was hospitalized for quite a bit of time and incurred quite a bit of expense to keep he or she alive. And what it boiled down to was a question of, was the disclosure made in time to be underwritten by the reinsurer? And it ended up not getting in specifics, and it ended up getting into litigation because the stop loss reinsurer refused to cover that child at the stop loss deductible. They came back and did kind of a Monday morning quarterbacking arrangement and said we would have lasered this child at $800,000, which this was like probably 18, 20 years ago. So imagine what that cost would be today. That there's two really big things that I think could, if you don't do it right, could put you in a really bad position. Excuse me, with self-funding. Number one is from a stop loss contract standpoint, going through the entire contract and making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So something like this doesn't occur. Number two in self-funding would be what's been going on recently and has been freaking a lot of people out is the pharmacy contract from a PBM standpoint, right? There are
Pharmacy is
so
a
many
really big
employers.
risk.
Yeah, there's so many employers out there, Margot, that if you ask them to present their master contract from their pharmacy benefit manager, they couldn't do it. And if they did, and you asked them if it's been reviewed, they probably could slough it off. But I guarantee you, 98% of employers out there have not seen nor reviewed or had a audit done of their pharmacy contract, which could be really problematic. There's a lot of definitions and terms of what a generic or a brand is, what sort of defines a rebate, what the discount guarantee. There's so much minutia that even a professional like myself or an advisor that's been doing this long enough might not know everything about it. And you need to get a subject matter expert involved. Imagine you being a CFO or CEO or an CHRO of a company that's spending millions of dollars on pharmacy alone, and you haven't reviewed the terms of the master agreement. You have no idea you haven't scrutinized anything. You could have very well left the company's nose so wide open to huge expenses that would legitimately have to be paid because those were the terms of the pharmacy contract and the agreement that you signed. I've not seen, I can't think of another industry or a company. If you look at a specific company and they could be selling widgets, they could be selling a service, you would think they would scrutinize everything down to the light bulb for a company, okay? But when it comes to benefits and when it comes to health insurance, it's the complete polar opposite. I'm sure Anthem's got it. I'm sure United Healthcare's got it. I'm sure Optum's covered it. No. I mean, why would you not scrutinize something that is, other than what you pay people, is your second largest overhead expense, and it just
Yeah,
continues to
exactly.
increase? I don't understand it. I really want to sometimes put my head up against the wall when people act like that.
It's so
It's
funny,
amazing.
actually. It just reminds me of, this uh 2008 situation when things were like obvious on the paper, but nobody was reading this. And
And when you paint that picture to people and the light bulb comes on, it's like, yes, I mean, it shouldn't have come to this, but there's a reason why you look at the big three or four PBMs in this country and their profitability and how big they are. And there's a correlation to why they're so big and how out of control pharmacy costs are. Because that's their aligned incentive. They want pharmacy costs to be out of control because they're more profitable that way.
especially in a large corporation, person that hasn't worked at insurance company and hasn't been in the medical sphere in general, they usually cannot understand those terms. Okay, so you need a professional like benefits broker. But what they do is and we know that uh, move the benefits. Like the first instance is HR. HR has nothing to do with healthcare at all. I don't know how this position in general got so much power in the corporate sector in America to manage the benefits, two sides of which medical and finance have nothing to do with HR.
You know who Mark Cuban is, right?
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked that is when he started Mark Cuban's Cost Plus Drugs and he started getting heavily into healthcare, he did a webinar or he was on a panel discussion where he's a healthcare CFO that just manages the health insurance from a financial standpoint. It should not be HR. It should not be the CEO. They should hire a separate person to just manage that expense. And another thing to point out about HR, Margot, is that it's one of the most thankless jobs in a company because They wear so many hats. One thing they should not be wearing from a hat standpoint is anything financial related when it comes to benefits. Like you pointed out earlier, their focus should be on recruitment, retention, payroll, many different aspects. Benefits should be one that on a general level they should be involved with. But when it comes to the finances of benefits, no, that's why you should have a separate, that should be the VP of finance. That should be a separate healthcare CFO, or just the CFO in general should be involved, heavily involved in that.
Based on what I hear from you and what I hear from the market participants, HR can help you in getting the deal in only in one case. If there is a noise and they want to get rid of it, that's it. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing else will help you get the deal, and HR will keep blocking it. If it's okay, if the noise is not so big, if, anything else like operational expense is raising,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. If the noise is not too big, HR will not help you get the deal. They will keep blocking it.
The only instance I could see HR helping is if you cultivate a relationship with HR and you make he or she look really good to the C-suite. If you bring in something that they haven't been exposed to and it's her or his idea, bringing you in as a benefits advisor and this solution or strategy, that's the only way I can see you doing that. But again, HR people are not usually open to building new relationships with benefit advisors.
Well, I can tell you why. Because the risk reward is not
Right.
proportional.
True.
Some broker comes to HR. So if they screw up, everything falls on HR's head. Like, you recommended them, you did this, you did that, from the C suite standpoint. If they do good, the CFO gets extra money. Employees will be happy, yes, but risk reward is not proportional. That's why they do not get involved.
Hmm.
And that's why they are not advocates for any change.
When I in a prior life, when I worked for another brokerage firm, there was a guy who went around the country. We did these seminars and we talked about kind of the tools of the trade behind the scenes and kind of the secret sauce of what's going on when it comes to healthcare and pricing. And I'm not kidding you. He was talking about when push comes to shove, you either put a finance hat on or a human resources hat on. And he would literally have hats that say finance or human resources. And he goes, there's no such thing as a hat that's called humantial resources. Okay. It's either financial or human resources. You can't put both on.
I love that.
Yeah. So I remember
Good.
that. He was like, there's no such thing as humantial resources. So you either got to draw a line in the sand on you're going to focus on the finance or you're going to focus from the HR aspect. And he was
Like
right.
100%. It all depends on brokers. As long as they keep being forwarded to HR as the first instance and they keep talking to HR, nothing will change. If the brokers massively will say, hey, I am not talking to HR anymore, okay? And I only need to talk to finance or I need to talk to CEO, someone who is a decision maker on the financial level, then this HR thing might change. But we all know that the market participants will not be doing that. They
Right.
will talk to the gatekeeper or someone, some secretary, anyone in the organization if they're allowed to.
What I also find too, and it doesn't matter if it's HR or if it's finance or if it's the C-suite. I might have mentioned this in our first discussion. I had a couple examples today with people that I reached out to and their answers. Marco, if it's not their money and they're not writing checks out of their account, they don't care. It's not that important to them. It's the old adage, if it's not my money, it's not my problem. So again, if it was, John Doe Inc. and I was talking to John Doe, and I guarantee you, if he was, Anthem was writing checks out of his account to pay for his employees' health insurance, I guarantee you he would be laser focused on it. But
Yeah.
it's not. So it's XYZ company's money. So you know what? I don't want to disrupt the apple cart, and I'm just gonna do like you said, if there's no noise, there's no problem. Simple as that.
But that's not even the biggest problem that we're facing nowadays. What we're facing is HR or CFO having special relationship with
Hmm.
certain broker. And that happens in large organizations more than we all know. Okay. Well,
Sure.
then CEOs know. Do you have any way to spot this kind of behavior from the first meetings or the first interaction with the company? Do you know if, if there is some monkey business going on?
I'm above board. I'm an honest, straightforward person, Margot. So if based on the line of questioning and who they're with and how they're responding to some questions initially, I like to virtually come out and just be honest and forthright and go, is there a special or unique relationship you guys have with your current advisor? And you don't have to give me specifics, but it would help me address if this is something that you guys would ideally entertain or not. Because again, I think honesty is truly the best policy, Margot, because the last thing I want to do is waste my time. And the last thing I want to do is waste that person's time. So if they're just doing this as kind of a token courtesy, then that hour conversation would probably be over in about 5 to 8 minutes. And I've done that before. I've, you kind of need to vet and weed it out because time is money, right? It's precious. You don't want to waste an hour of your day if it's not going to go anywhere. So you might as well try to, you know, shorten it based on some of the initial questions. You should be able to tell pretty quickly if this is a legitimate opportunity or not. So I've done this long enough. I'm just going to be honest and ask them point blank, why are we here? Why am I here talking to you? Is it because there's a genuine need for something that you feel is lacking, or there's some disruption that you're looking to remedy? Or is it just that, you said, hey, let's go to lunch, and you said, you know what, I'll just take you up on it and just hear your pitch, and that's it. I don't want those types of that's a that's the difference in my mind between a contender and a pretender. Contenders are ones that I can actually establish a relationship and eventually a potential client. I have a pretty good idea of who the pretenders are by the line of questioning up front in an initial conversation with an HR person, a CHRO, or HR manager or benefits manager.
And you never tried to change it? Like, for example, if you knew that CEO had no idea and you spotted this kind of situation in the company?
Oh no, I wouldn't. I don't always lay down and just go, okay, we're done. Depending on the situation and what I know going into the meeting, I might poke and prod some things that I try to go in as knowledgeable based on public information or intel as possible, doing my homework about the company and or looking up their 5500 on the Department of Labor website to see who they're working with, and being able to maybe pinpoint how much they're spending or how much they're paying their advisor. I'll ask some of those thought-provoking questions to see how they respond and see if I can kind of capture their attention and maybe position it from a pretender to a contender.
Yeah.
I've done that before in an initial meeting where after a few minutes I'm thinking there's no way that I'm going to get another meeting or we're going to continue this conversation to talking to him for another 90 minutes.
Well, if that's the situation across the company and everybody knows, then yes. But in your opinion, do you think that I know that there's a lot of like special relationship going on and between C-suite in general and the insurance companies, but do you think that CEOs or company owners, I would say that would be the right word, company owners usually know about that kind of relationship, or do you think that they're like, delusional or just don't want to look there?
No, I think broadly they probably know there's a relationship there. To what extent they probably don't, because I bet it's the ball games and the dinners and the vacations or the concerts that I'm sure the people beneath the C-suite are not going to divulge that because they don't want to think that they're being sold, and they don't want to feel like they want to come off being objective to the CEO, the CFO. So a lot of those things are probably not identified by the top leadership levels. I'm not saying not always, but I think in a lot of instances, if that HR person was smart, they would kind of keep that under wraps.
Yeah.
All the different things that they're being schmoozed by their relationship from their advisor. Because again, they don't want to put their job in jeopardy. They could have a CFO or CEO that goes, you know what, that's not acceptable. And if I find out again, you're accepting some gifts or something from our advisor, we're going to get rid of both of you potentially.
I think that actually any type of relationship between HR or CFO and the advisor is like fire immediately, because it's like it's involving the entire organization and it is the second biggest operational expense. And I can tell you that if there's some kind of special relationship, that means that it's on the cost of the healthcare plan that is overpriced. And in
Yeah.
this case, no one no one can be objective in the
Right.
decision making process. So I would say, I mean, if I would spot that as a 100 plus live group or whatever in my organization, it's like fire immediately.
I agree with you. I think some people though feel that it's a lot of trouble to have to let somebody go and have to replace. Tough to find. That's a position that's really difficult to fill. A really strong HR director or a CHRO or somebody that's, especially for larger companies, total rewards, directors, things like that. That's not easy to fill. So I think there's something in the back of the mind sometimes of, okay, is the um, is the violation worth the punishment, worth the crime, or the punishment worth the crime, is it worth grounds for termination?
Well, we're talking so much, about the problem. I want to find the solution still. I mean, what is the
Sure.
solution? Not talk to HR ever, talk only to the C suite. What shall we do? What's
Yeah.
next?
I I feel like your success rate goes down the less you have HR involved in some form or fashion. I feel like if you went around HR, they would do everything and anything to try to sabotage you. So I feel like it's okay to go and contact the CFO or a VP of HR or a VP of finance or a controller or CEO. But once you get in the door, I feel like you got to make an honest effort to try to get HR involved from the outset, even if it's on an indirect basis.
That's actually a wise strategy, but they should have just limited amount of influence, which, for example, is stating what employees need, acknowledging them, as a person
Right.
who is a voice of employees with case studies and everything, who talks to them every single day, and etc., etc. And that's it. The line
But
should be drawn there.
I agree with you. I feel like that, unfortunately, that's an internal decision that's got to be made. I don't feel, I mean, you got to be subtle, but I feel like that's something that the C suite needs to decide in house and not hear that from us, even though we would agree with them.
We all know situations because, in companies, still have people making decisions. And we all have situations when the decisions are, I mean, someone comes in, they disrupt the situation within, they lead the deal, okay, long enough. It's just what what I want brokers to do is to stick to the deal 12 to 18 to 36 months, because that's how you make a change, not by, making one call and then making the second call in Q4. That's not the case how the deals are done. But
True.
when you're leading the deal throughout the, month and month, and you're constantly talking to multiple decision makers, there's no way that you cannot just pull this HR over. That's what we do every single time. We just make sure that they have their playground and they don't interfere with us. But it's, once again, it's all leading the deal. It's not done through one phone call or one Zoom call and et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. It's not. It's a long process, and brokers don't want to stick to their goals usually when they're working solo. You don't
Yeah.
even do you know that I heard from Craig Lack actually that 80% of people never follow up. It's just
No,
80% of calls are just lost
yep.
because, it's just brokers are talking all the time that I need to make the call. Okay, first of all, what are you going to say? And secondly, if you're never going to call them back again or call back in, I don't know, like 6 months, today's calls were lost because they don't
Correct.
remember you.
Right. No, you talk to any sales professional out there, a coach, they say the exact same thing, that's one of the problems in our industry is that the follow up's horrible for people. They don't it dissipates, or it takes too long, and then eventually, like you said, they've forgotten everything you talked about during your initial conversation, because
Absolutely.
6 months, yeah, because you waited 6 months to reach back out to them. you
And
know?
that's why HR and status quo keeps winning, because you cannot just tell and throw the information into them and then disappear thinking that they will cook. That's not the way
Right,
the minds are changed. It's a
right.
long process. And probably the first step towards changing this whole status quo thing within organizations and the HR's impact and the whole bazaar, I would say, not letting the right brokers to the C suite is just sticking to the deal, sticking to your prospecting,
Yeah,
picking the number of prospects wisely and just going back to them every single time and just drop by drop you're getting this idea to them.
right.
That's the solution I can see. If your life was a TV show, that's a fun one. If your life was a TV show, what would it be called?
Gosh.
Make up some name, but
Uh,
just make sure it's accurate.
if I had a TV show, I would say, gosh,
It should have status quo and
it
disrupt.
should. Well, I was gonna say the show Survivor, but it'd be Survivor of the Great American Healthcare Scam is what I would call the show.
Bravo.
Yeah.
I love it.
Because I mean, it is. It's in a general sense, the way our healthcare system is run and it's delivered, it's a scam. I mean, it's so opaque and everybody's so guarded and you just don't get the full story and people are just not put in a it's not like anything else we consume in life. You know what I'm saying? It's like, when you go to the grocery store and you pull something off the shelf, you know how much it costs. You have a reasonable idea of how much it costs that grocer to buy that item. You don't have that in healthcare. You can get in line and pay for a gallon of milk, and let's say it's 3.79, and then two people down is a woman that has the same gallon of milk, and she goes to the register and it's $13. It's like, wait a second, why is theirs 13 and mine's 3.79? It's the exact same item. That's what healthcare is. Why if my gallbladder is removed at this hospital and 6 months later somebody else has the same procedure at the same hospital, but they pay twice as much as I did? There's no rhyme or reason for that. Why? It was the same procedure, took the same amount of time, used the same surgeon, same anesthesiologist, but it was twice the cost. That's a scam to me. That doesn't give you any it's all over the place. It's all over the board. There's really no, like I said, there's no rhyme or reason why there should be any variance in what one person's cost is versus another for the exact same item. They're led to believe there is no other way, by brokers that just do the bare minimum. I've had put some proposals and some strategies and solutions that would, cut improve benefits and reduce expense by like a third to a half. And then you get it sounds too good to be true. What's the catch? No, there is no catch. It's just you haven't been educated on doing it the right way.
You know that I created the strategy on inner minimum, inner breakdown, and inner maximum. These are three stages that the client needs to surpass in order to make a change within their organization. And inner minimum is their basic minimum, what they have, what they can tolerate. Inner breakdown is when they figure out that the system is not working and they cannot tolerate it anymore. And inner maximum, you just mentioned, it shouldn't be like too good to be true. And that's why with brokers, we shape the proposals. We don't uncover every single thing because clients sometimes think that it's too good to be true. And what we do is we actually 50-60% better than whatever they have right now, but not like 200% better.
Yeah, I mean, when you position it that when you're talking to a buyer, you go, believe it or not, I could help enhance your benefits offering and at the same time cut the expense by a third. How would you like doing that? You get the eye roll, like, really? I mean, come on. What am I missing here? What's the catch? This just doesn't seem like that's feasible. I position it like, give me the opportunity. Let me show you. If you give me the necessary information, I will build something that will be presentable, that will basically cover both those bases. It will enhance what you're doing and it will cut your overhead expense by 30 to 40%. And if I get to that level, my close ratio goes up quite a bit. It's getting to that level is the hard part because again, It's all the roadblocks, right? HR, it's not a top priority with me right now. Call me back in 3 months. And then they're just making excuses to try to put you off until it's too late to make a change. And then they're like, call me again in 6 months, and maybe kind of just put you off. I get those responses all the time, unfortunately.
Today, I spoke about the fact that brokers just say the same things, over and over again, and that pitch about saving is actually something that every single broker uses. And do you think that the prospects are just a bit tired from the pitches? Because, when they're pitched like by different brokers. Some of them are not able to actually follow their words and do
Right.
something. And they also have some past experience of communicating with some brokers. And when someone comes in and says the same words, they just believe that they just remember the last guy they spoke to. They This guy said the same thing, that they will save 30%, and they're like, no, it's a scam.
Well,
What they're using right now is not a scam, but saving 30% is a scam.
that's why if you use it in a generality like that, I can see that that's where the education and the counsel comes in my approach. Because if you tie what you could potentially save to one particular problem that you've unpacked, that you can articulate and be able to kind of communicate and educate them on, then you have credibility. If you just say, "Oh, I can save you X," and not really give them any specifics as to how to do that, then they're going to think it's BS. But if you can quantify, hey, what if you did this with your medical claims? What if you did this with your pharmacy contract? What if you carved out your specialty, or you did direct to consumer on these GLP medications versus running it through your PB? Those are things that if you just talk on a general level without getting into specific dollars and cents, I think that lends to credibility. They're like, oh, interesting. I've never been told that we could do this, or we can reimburse our medical claims on a basis of a Medicare multiple. I didn't know that hospitals would accept that 95% of the time. Those are the conversations I try to have in an initial conversation with a company or a C-suite or an HR director. So I know that their current advisor 90% of the time has not had those conversations. And again, that lends to the differentiation to what they're currently doing today.
Yeah, if they have the need
Right.
to
Right.
listen.
True. Again, HR is really tough because they're supposed to manage the purse strings, but do they have any skin in the game on those purse strings? No, they don't.
No,
It's not their money, right? So they just want to protect themselves from getting fired or getting in trouble.
a person. Or when there is employee noise, once
Right.
again, we
Right.
talked about, they're
True.
ready to listen to the employee noise.
Correct.